President Obama spoke to Fareed Zakaria, and he responded to the rise of Donald Trump.
As you watch the support that Donald Trump has, and you watch where it comes from, I'm wondering what you make of it, because you've written in the past that the cancer side of your family is white, working class, Scotch-Irish. Mm-hmm. These are the people who support Trump. These are the people who seem to have the most suspicion about you. Right. What do you make of that?
Well, look, there's a long tradition in the United States of inclusion, immigration, diversity, but also people, once they're included in what they consider to be the real America, worrying about outsiders, contaminating, polluting, messing up a good thing. That's not new. That dates back to the beginning of this country. And what I'm always reminding people is that although you'll see bumps, whether it's the know-nothings or other spasms of anti-immigrant sentiment directed at the Irish or Southern Europeans as opposed to Northern Europeans, or the Chinese, or today Latinos or Muslims, the long-term trend is people get absorbed, people get assimilated, and we benefit from this incredible country in which the measure of your patriotism and how American you are is not the color of your skin, your last name, your faith, but rather your adherence to a creed, your belief in certain principles and values. And I don't expect that that's going to change simply because Mr. Trump's got a little more attention than usual. And I think if you look at the current polls, he's been able to appeal to a certain group of folks who feel left out or worried about the rapidity of demographic change, social change, who in some cases have very legitimate concerns around the economy and feeling left behind. But that's not the majority of America. And if you talk to younger people, the next generation of Americans, they completely reject the kinds of positions that he's taking. So, we have to take it seriously. I think that anytime we hear intolerance, anytime that we hear policy measures that are contrary to our values, banning certain classes of people because of who they are, what they look like, what faith they practice, then we have to be pretty hard about saying no to that. And I think that America will do that this time as well. So overall, I'm optimistic, but I think we have to pay close attention to what's going on.
So that's a thoughtful answer, and clearly he's saying that he's optimistic about America overall in the long run. And Trump is something, well, we've kind of seen similar things before, and the trend is that we move towards more inclusion and more togetherness and a better America, so it could just be a blip in the radar effectively. But I have to say I disagree with him. And the reason I disagree with him is that Donald Trump couldn't have happened if it wasn't for a complete and utter failure of the establishment. So that's a bold claim because obviously, first and foremost, the person you blame for Trump is Donald Trump. And second of all is his supporters. But there is definitely an element of the collapse of the establishment and the disconnection of the establishment from regular American people has led to them feeling hopeless and helpless, and they go, we got to shake things up. We got to change shit. We got to change shit. We have to do it. So what are we going to do? I don't know. Go for the person who seems most in favor of change. He's an unhinged, crazy person. But you know what? I can't with this business as usual. I just can't anymore. I can't. So we're going to go for him. This is partly what's happening in people's minds. Now understand, there is a great portion of Trump support where you can say, well, you can't blame anybody else but these people because these are just bigots. These are just bigots. These are just xenophobes. and, white nationalist people coming out of the woodworks and, yeah, somebody's finally standing up for the master race. Like, that exists. So there is an element of Trump supporters, some of them, who are like that. But to just focus on that, I think, is disingenuous. Because then that's the establishment trying to absolve itself of its responsibility. So they don't want to focus on the people who really are hurting economically, and that leads them to say, well, we got to do something crazy here, and we got to go in a radically different direction, and that's why I support Trump. So this goes back to the Paul Krugman segment we did a while ago, where Paul Krugman was like, no, it's just the bigotry and xenophobia. That's the only thing that motivates Trump supporters, and it's not economic strife. Well, Obama's being a little bit better here, and he's saying, well, no, some of it is economic strife. And what I'm saying is, Trump certainly couldn't have won if it wasn't for the economic strife and the disconnection that the establishment has with the people and the constituents. So, for example, when you look at the establishment Republicans and the establishment Democrats, they're both in favor of cutting Social Security. People forget, Obama proposed cutting Social Security. It was just the Republicans wanted bigger cuts. So they said, you know what, we're going to pass, because they honestly thought we should get better than this and we should get more cuts. That was better in the minds of the Republican establishment. So you have both parties that say we need to cut Social Security. Gee, I wonder why the people are mad, and I wonder why they flip out and go for a buffoon like Donald Trump, because they think he might change that. And Trump said repeatedly in the debates, I'm not going to cut Social Security. I'm not going to cut it. I'm not going to cut it. I'm not going to cut it. Another thing is they're both pro-intervention. I mean, you have the Republicans, forget it. They're for, invading everywhere and fucking occupying everywhere. The Democrats are more sophisticated in their intervention. They like soft imperialism. We'll do drone strikes here and traditional airstrikes there and some special ops boots on the grounds there, but don't call it a war ever, even though we just did 7 fucking interventions. They're both for that. Now, half the time, Trump is the most interventionist, and he says, I want to kill civilians and torture. Bah! But then also half the time, he's like, you know what? Let's stop and let's rebuild our infrastructure. There's probably a lot of people hear that and they go, well, yes, finally somebody's fucking saying it. Finally somebody's saying it. We don't even have fucking clean water in a lot of these places around the country. And the Democrats and the Republicans both agree, well, we got to go, spend more overseas. Oh, come on, man. And most importantly, TPP. We have a supposedly liberal Democratic president who's like, I'm in favor of TPP. Well, if the Democratic establishment is for TPP and the Republican establishment is for TPP, it's no wonder that any populist candidate, left or right, does well. Because they say, I'm not for TPP. That's what Donald Trump's been saying. Now, again, I want to be clear here. I don't believe Trump. He personally outsourced his own jobs. Do I think he'll outsource more and sign trade deals? Of course I do. Duh. But his rhetoric is what's driving this. And it's not just bigotry and xenophobia. It also is... yes, economic strife. And this economic strife leads people, this, weariness of the establishment leads people to say anything but the establishment. And unfortunately, on the Democratic side, you have Hillary Clinton, who is the epitome of the establishment. She is the ultimate insider, corrupt politician. And so, people look at her and they're like, oh, God, this is why Trump has a chance. Dude, they're tied in unfavorables right now. Did you know that? Trump and Hillary are tied among registered voters in unfavorables. That's unbelievable. But it's really not that unbelievable, and we've been warning you about it all along. Because you have the ultimate establishment corrupt insider versus the crazy buffoon fascist. And because the state of affairs is so bad for average Americans, because the wages have been stagnant since the 80s, they go, maybe anything but the establishment person. So let's go for Trump. And I think Obama, final point is, I think Obama is largely naive about this angle of it. He is. He thinks like, come on. Trump, come on, right? No, but that come on doesn't mean anything. Because if it ain't Trump this time around, which it might not be, but if it ain't Trump this time around, you don't think there's going to be another Trump? Another faux populist demagogue who can get massive support? Of course there will be. And there will be, again, because the establishment is so disconnected from the people.